Hi everyone, welcome to Punkwright. My name is Smee. If you've been following the channel at all, or you're on Instagram or Twitter, feel free to check that out. You'll understand that I have reached an apex for one of my major projects, which is the publication of my book, SCARBOYS. Now, from the beginning, I put together the website, Punkwright, and the idea of the YouTube channel as a way of promoting independent work. I love the idea of just doing things yourself from the beginning to the end. That is full ownership of a product. Now, the problem is that when you deal with something like a book, the learning curve for all the different aspects of the book creation is very complex. However, when I embarked on this project of SCARBOYS, I felt like I had enough of the basic tools and skill set to be able to learn and publish it all the way to the end. Over the next few weeks, I'm going to make a few videos that touch upon some of the more complex aspects of creation, including the creation of my book cover, the publication and formatting, which we'll take a look at today, and other aspects of the process that maybe you'll glean some knowledge from. Stick around on Punkwright. Don't go anywhere. Hello everyone, welcome to an introduction on how to do some basic formatting for the inside of your book for KDP or Barnes & Noble's publishing. And I'm going to take you through my setup. Here's my book, SCARBOYS. And this is interesting because you'll see that I've inserted some graphics here that I've wanted inside both the e-reader and the print option. This is for those of you who want to do something a little bit more or you have some more complex texts, and I'm going to take you through this general setup. So let's just get right into it. Before you do anything, what you're going to want to do is go through chapter by chapter and make sure that you've laid out each chapter of your book on an individual Word document. Now, this is going to give you some advantages because it allows you to treat each chapter independently, so you can do special formatting, and the InDesign is made as a program to put books together. So as you create these individual documents, you'll have InDesign documents for each chapter, and you'll be able to combine those later on into your actual book. So do this first. It's going to save you some time, and I'll explain a little bit about why it's important to have individual documents. I've also gone through and I've made a graphic in Photoshop. This is in my folder as well, and you're going to want to keep these in your folder because InDesign functions with links. Any graphics that you're going to want to insert, whether it be names or special fonts, you're going to want to put them here. This is a PSD document, which is a Photoshop document. So let's get into InDesign right now. I'm going to create a new document, and it's going to give me some default actions here. This is going to be in picas. Picas is one form of measurement, but because we are usually going to be dealing with inches in KDP or Barnes & Noble's, those are going to give you a little bit more accurate dimensions for your pages. So I'm going to convert that to inches, and I'm going to use 5.5 and 8.5 for the size of my book. It's extremely important that you have this option ticked, which is the primary text frame. This has benefits in terms of maintaining certain spacings within your document. If you don't have this, it's going to be significantly more complex. Lastly, you can deal with some margins. Remember, when you deal with a book, you have what is called the gutter, which is the middle section of your book where you have the crease. And so you can, if you want a little bit of girth on those, you can add a little bit. I would be very careful though, because you don't really want to go much beyond 0.75 would be more than that is going to push you beyond the borders, and you're going to get a default error in KDP. I'm actually going to go a little bit less, but I'm going to give you a little extra margin. I'll just keep it there at 0.5 just for this. Bleeding slug, you don't have to worry about. And go ahead and create your document. Again, this is your primary text box, and you'll see that it's given you a default box right over the margins. This is going to be relevant later, but I know that I'm going to want to start half page. So I'm just going to drag that down, and I want my text to be here, and I have some ideas of what I want in the top portion there. So go ahead and draw that. And I'm also going to draw a text box on top because this is where I have interest in putting the names of, or the numbers of my chapters. And I'm also going to draw a text box here because I know that I want some text that goes in there. So we'll leave those as a general setup, and we'll move on to the next step. Now I'm going to go ahead and save my document. You can see this is an untitled document, and this is just kind of a generic preset. So I'm going to save this as the title of my book, SCARBOYS, and I'm going to call this preset. Now, you can see that I've created this folder on my desktop called Layout and InDesign. Here's the same folder here on my desktop. I'm going to make sure that I save this InDesign document in here because, again, I'm dealing with links. This PSD document will be linked there, and you do not want to have things separate. It's always beneficial to keep things in their own folders. And now I've named my document. But now, I'd like to set up what are called some paragraph styles. The paragraph styles allow you to manipulate how you want the text to look within each one of these text boxes. So I'm going to go back to my SCARBOYS. You can see that within the book, on this page, this is a different font size and type. This is also a different font size and type. And if I go to subsequent chapters, you'll see that I also have special text and text styles in there. All of those have different demands on your preset. So I'm going to take a look at those. Close my Photoshop here and make sure that I get them correct. Okay, so I'm just going to show you. If I take, let's look at my first chapter. My first chapter is a couple of different text styles. And if I open up Word, which is what I wrote this in, and I was very meticulous about the styles within Word. Be careful if you just copy. I'm going to Command C that and paste this right in, just so you can see what's going to happen. You can see that it's totally messed up all of my formatting that I had in Word. This is a huge problem. Because I have spent a lot of time and been very meticulous making things look as I want them. So I'm just going to Command Z that. And the way around this is that you do not want to copy paste in. You want to go to the actual document and just drag it right into the, if I can get a hold of it here, right into the text box. And InDesign is intelligent enough to make those adjustments. And so you can see right here that it maintains, for the most part, the standards of my formatting. However, you also notice that it's not perfect. Here I have extra spaces that I can't really deal with. And instead of going through and changing everything, I'm going to set up what are some paragraph styles and presets. And the first thing, I'm going to do this in two parts because this text I know is going to go up here. So I'm just going to delete that all the way up, and I'm just going to paste that in right here. And I'll come back to this in a moment because this is going to be a separate preset, and I'm going to put in my number, my chapter number right here, and I want that to be centered, and I will call it chapter 1, and I'll come back to this in a second as well. I'm going to show you just one more thing that you should pay attention to. You can see that in this text box, there is a plus here, and there also is a registered error. It says I have one error. These correspond. It says in this particular case that there is text that is missing that I cannot see. I can just show you that as I drag this down and the rest of the text now appears. You can see that that goes to green. It says there are no errors. If you get any errors in your document at any time, you should take care of it. And you can get it for various reasons. That's one that I showed you. You can also get it for missing links or broken links, which I'll talk about later. I'm just going to leave this as it is for now, and I don't mind the error, just so I can have the space. And I will deal with this text as a preliminary text in a while. But for now, let's take a look at the main body text, and I'm going to go to my paragraph styles, and I'm going to set this up under a new paragraph style, and I'm just going to name this and call it main body text. Main body text is going to be a preset that I will select, and I'm going to make sure that it's everything that I want. This is defaulted under Times New Roman, which is good. Font style, italic. No, italic is not good. I want regular font. And depending on the number of words, you can decrease the size of your font. I will leave it at 12. Okay, and you can also deal with leading and tracking. Leading deals with the space between the letters. All of that is absolutely up to you, whatever preference is for the visual that you want to achieve. I do want to pay attention to indents and spacing because there are a couple of different types of spacings that I want to use. First is that for the document that you're going to input, you are not going to get the same format that you've done in Word. So this is where you have to dictate to make sure you get the results. I am going to increase this because I want my first line to be indented. I'll just do this 1/4 of an inch, which is not a whole lot, but it's enough. And this space after, we'll leave that at, I want no space after. I'm not exactly sure why that's there. I'll leave that at 0. And you do want to pay attention to this space between paragraphs using the same style. That means that it's going to add an extra space after your paragraph, which I also do not want because it makes up a different type of feeling. So you want to make sure this is at 0. Good. Now we're moving on. I don't have any need for tabs or paragraph rules. I do want to look at hyphenation because, this is just my personal preference. I don't really want hyphenated words in my text at all. So I can just take this option off, and that means it'll have no hyphens. If I want to have, if I want some, or I don't have any kind of mind for that, I can also manipulate how much. I can have fewer hyphens and maybe you only get 1 or 2 per page. Or if I put better spacing, then it's going to give me much more hyphenation. I'm just going to take this off for now, but you might want to take a look at that. And with that, I'm going to hit OK. Good. Now that I've created my paragraph style, all I have to do is select. But you could have a little bit of a problem, and I just want to show you what we'll do. This is to our benefit later, because if I put my cursor within my text and I hit main body text, it's going to do my formatting. But you can see that there's a bit of a problem here because it's messed up with my spacing. Now, the good thing is that this allows me to deal with individual parts, which I will do later. Like this beginning part, I want to make a new preset that will keep this tight. But if you're having this problem, make sure that you highlight everything and then go ahead and hit main body text, and you'll see that it's going to change that and justify everything and make it tight as you would. And now my text is looking great. And you can see that it's automatically added the pages, and it even has added extra pages. So we'll go back and delete those in just a moment. Now, I want to deal with this because I want stylistically for all of my paragraphs where there are full caps, I want it to begin with a hard left justification. So what I'm going to do is just open up this. I don't want to work too hard, so I'm just going to duplicate this style. And it's going to keep everything the same, but I do want to change the indent and spacing. And now I'm just going to put this at 0. And so now I'm going to have a new, this is called let's just call it intro paragraph text. That's a new preset that's going to appear here. So if I click on the front and I hit that, it's going to keep everything starting fully justified left, and it's not going to change the rest of my, oh, that looks different right there. Let's try again. Main body text. Yeah, there it is. So you can highlight as you go and correct those. The rest should be, whoops, that's a problem. Let's see what happens. Okay. So this is good for a little problem solving because you can see that although it's justified here, it's giving me that extra space. So that's something in my setup that I have to take care of. I'm going to go back into intro paragraph text and take a look at the spacing. And there it is. That's the problem, space after. I'm going to turn that to 0. Hit OK. Let's see if that solves the problem. And you can see that it already did right there. So this is now, I'm going to start back again, main body text, highlight everything, main body text. Now I'm going to just go to my first paragraph, hit intro paragraph. There, that's fixed. The justification left, there's no space after this first. So that's just some troubleshooting that if you run into, you just have to be critical about. Good. Now that we've dealt with the main body text, I'm going to take a look at this introductory text right here. And this I want to set apart because this is not actually part of the story. This is more of an aggregate element that I want to set apart. And I also need to create a little distance because I do want to put a graphic in here. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back into a new paragraph style and create, we'll call this pretext. And I'm going to create a different style. I think I'm going to use, let's use Avenir for now. And what is going to be different is the leading. The leading is going to be the space between each line. So I'm going to reduce this because I want it to be a little bit tighter. Let's see what 8-point looks like. I'll come back to that. The character formats are fine. Indents and spacing. I don't want any margin, so I keep that at 0. I want to make sure that this is also at 0. And I also want to make sure that my hyphenation is off. And here's a new preset. Here it is, pretext. So I'm going to click in here and see what that looks like. Okay, that's interesting. I don't love it. So I'm going to go back and make some changes. And you can see there are some justification issues as well. I'm going to make sure that this is justified, left justified. And I'm going to go back and change this because I think it's a little bit too tight. Let's try that. And now I see my pretext, and there it is. That is not perfect, but it's good enough for me now. And I'm just going to give you one space between this. And I can still make some adjustments out here. Now, all of these are going to be a little different, so you might have to do a little bit of adjustment, but I've got the main idea done. Good. So if I can click off this, and just to give you a quick view of what this might look like, this is what a page is going to look. Now, let's move on to page numbers and we can continue with our process. The benefit of using InDesign for your page numbers is that you don't have to do things individually. You're tapping into the algorithm of the program itself. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Also make a quick comment here. I have my layout in individual pages. If you are more comfortable in looking in spreads, as it's called, I can change the way I see that. If I go to document setup and I want to look at facing pages, now I'm looking at a spread layout. And it just condenses things a bit. That's up to you. It's your preference. If I go to master pages, this allows me to go double click, and I'm kind of looking at what's behind my document. I'm going to start working with the algorithm of page numbering. If I go to type, insert special character, markers. Oops, I have a small problem I'm going to solve. If I get that, I need to actually create my text box first. Forgot about that. I create my text box, and my text box, I would suggest, is going to run from the margin to margin of where your text will be, not from the end of the paper to the end of the paper, because that's going to maybe offset your number according to where your text is placed, particularly if you've changed the margin on this side. So once I do that, I'm going to go to type, insert special character, markers, and I'm going to insert current page number. And it's going to give me, again, it's part of the algorithm. It's not the actual page number. I don't have to change that. I just have to be worried about where I want it. I want mine in the middle. And then when I click off, you can see that it gives me page numbers all the way down, finely numbered. And this is also going to hold true as I add more documents. It's going to automatically number those page numbers. Now there's a stylistic thing as well. I prefer not to have a page 1 for a couple reasons. Mostly it's aesthetic. You can see I have the one here and the one here. Plus I have a lot of information on my first chapter page. I just want to keep it as clean as possible. So I'm going to take that off, and I'm going to go to layout, pages, and again go to master pages. And I'm going to just eliminate that none. Okay, you can see that disappears there. No problem. My document is looking very good right now. Okay, now I'm getting into the last steps here, and there is a small graphic that I wanted just to embellish the chapter pages of my book. And I'd like to insert an image here. So I'm going to make a little space with my text box. And if I look over here on my desktop, I've created this Photoshop document. I'm not going to open up the Photoshop, but it's just a line here. And any graphic that I create in an Adobe program is going to be compatible with other Adobe programs. This is one of the benefits of using Adobe, because a Photoshop document or an Illustrator document that I've made graphics with will easily fit into InDesign. So what I'm going to do is insert this into my document, and I'm going to use a graphics box here and insert just an easy graphics box. And once I've done that, I can just take my Photoshop document that I've created, pull it over, drop it in, and now it's added a graphic. And then I can position that as I want so that it's comfortable. That looks pretty good. And I want to make sure, sometimes I like to go into a presentation screen mode to see what it's going to look like. So for me, that looks a little bit heavy. So I'm actually going to decrease this a little bit by holding my Shift Command. I can move that down. That's feeling a little bit better, and you can give me a little bit better alignment. That's going to be a little bit better. Good. Once I have done this, it's going to create what is called a link. And so InDesign functions not by actually incorporating the graphic into the program. It just reads or links to where that graphic is, so you can work more freely without the weight of those graphics within the program. Now, this is looking pretty good. Let's move on to the last steps. I've gone through and I've done various chapters. I've included my opening page, which I'll show you in a second, my prologue in chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Of course, I had 40 chapters in my book, so I just wanted to show you kind of what it would look like when you're putting this whole thing together. One thing I want to make sure of is that once I've got my individual chapters done, I want to look at the end and make sure that there are no extra pages. In some cases, you do want extra pages because it's going to create the spacings that you want, like in the opening. And again, I've put some graphics in here the same way. You can see those links in the graphic right here. I've made all of these in Photoshop, and this one I actually made in Illustrator and converted them and placed them in various places around. And this is going to be an aesthetic for the introduction to my book, but you notice I left an extra page here because I wanted some spacing. Pay attention to that because it will affect just the number of pages and how your book is going to look aesthetically. So once I've got all that, I'm going to close this and go back to my document. And the power of InDesign is that it is for layout and the creation of books. So I'm going to create a new book. If I do File, New Book, and I'm going to save this first. I'm going to save this to the desktop so that you can see it. I'm just going to call this SCARBOYS. And this is for a print copy. If you're doing an ebook, I would not suggest doing ebooks in InDesign for the reason that there are some problems with compression. Sometimes I've actually had an issue uploading it to Kindle, and the text is condensed, and there are certain overlays that don't work. I would highly suggest just to take a step back, if it's particularly it's your first time, and use HTML in Word or DocX to upload into your Kindle EPUB for the Kindle. This is exclusively for a print copy. So I'm going to save that to the desktop, and it's given me an open area here, and I'm just going to add my documents so you can see them. Should I add a bigger screen? Okay. All I have to do is go into my folder where I have all of my individual InDesign, and I'm going to let the algorithm work for me. And what this is going to do is take all of these independent files and condense them into a single file. You can do this one by one, and I'll just show you one example. So I can take a single opening. This is my opening document, and I want that first, so I can do it one by one. I can also do it by groups, but before I do that, I want to show you some numbering options. You can change the style. So this is going to be my opening pages, and I want Roman numerals. I do not necessarily want the normal numbers to clash with the actual book. I'm going to start this on page 1, and by default, you can see it's changed here, page 1. So I'm just going to bring in the other files, and this one I'm going to do in a bunch. Just pull that over. Very good. And I'm ready to export. So I'm going to take and highlight all of the documents that I want to export. I'm going to go to my option here. And again, there are some EPUB options for export. I would not suggest doing ePublication for Kindle uploads because it's a very restrictive format. HTML is going to be a little easier to deal with as a self-publisher. There are ways around this, but I think that you want to keep it simple, particularly if it's your first time. I'm going to export it for PDF, and there it is. It's going to save to this folder, and let's see what happens. Keep it as pages, not as spreads. And here it is. That looks pretty good. There it is. So this is, again, for print, so my graphics are showing up. It looks like the format that I want, and my numbers are correct. And I can go to my next chapters. This is great. Thanks for sticking around, Punk Right, today. I hope you learned a little bit of useful knowledge about how to format your book for paper and e-publications for Amazon, Barnes & Noble's publication, or any other digital form. It's really a revolution that's happening, and as long as you learn some basic skills, you can do it yourself. If you want to join the newsletter, I invite you to check out the Punk Right website right here. And that website, again, is 100% authentic. I've done all the work on Photoshop and InDesign to make those things happen, and it's been a fantastic learning curve. Just remember, you can do it yourself. Do it right. Punk Right.